Hello there, and many thanks for joining us on this edition of the program. I am Imonia Marere. All over Africa, women are a growing force to be reckoned with in business, politics, or public administration. Women are leading, they are participating and contributing to governance systems. Women are striving hard to improve their skills and promote their access to economic opportunities. In spite of systemic and structural barriers that tend to hinder them from realizing their economic and social potentials, they are making their marks in many spheres of life. The business sector is one area where African women have been most outstanding back in history. That tradition has been sustained over time and over the years. Now, along this line, Nigeria is hosting the second in the series of African Women Trade Conference. The Nigerian chapter of the Organization of Women in Trade, otherwise known as OWIT, a trade and investment support organization, is collaborating with 3 other OWIT African countries to put the conference together in Abuja, the Nigerian capital. The organization outlines its major objective as that of improving the knowledge and skills base of women on trade, laws, policies, rules and procedures, and will be attracting not less than 200 participants from various backgrounds such as entrepreneurs, academics, private sector operators, civil society organizations, trade unions, financial institutions, regional and international trade organizations, international development partners, government entities, and border agencies from across Africa and beyond to the Abuja conference. Now, what is the level of women's participation in regional and international trade? And what are the specific challenges that women face in their participation in international trade and business? What will be the scope and goals of this conference? And will it reflect on more gender involvement in intra-African and global trade, as well as on investment opportunities? We shall also explore the processes and procedures for gender participation in trade and business under the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, AFCFTA, which came into force on May 30, 2019. How well are women faring under the framework? What are the challenges, if any, and how can they be managed for better results? This is our focus on the program today. Join us. In a moment, we shall be meeting our guests who are right here in the studio. All right, let's get to meet our guests who are right here in the studio. First, from my immediate left is Mrs. Blessing Irabo Oza. She is the President, Organization of Women in Trade, OWIT, in Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, sir.
Right, we're also joined by Benjamin Achampong. Benjamin is the chairman of the organizing committee of the OWIT conference that's taking place here in the nation's capital. Mr. Achampong, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
And welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So, Madam President, let's begin on an exploratory note.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit more about OWIT. When did it come into being and what has it been doing?
Thank you so much for having us in the studio this afternoon, and we really want to appreciate AIT for the support that you're giving women. Organization of Women in International Trade started in 1989 in faraway Washington, D.C. by a group of women who saw the need for women to come together and foster international trade. So in 1989, Organization of Women in International Trade internationally was born, and today, as I speak, we have 27 chapters around the world. Organization of Women in International Trade came into Africa in the year 2000 with the support of the American Embassy in Nairobi, Kenya. But the OWIT chapter in Nigeria, we kicked off October 26, 2018. We were voted in as a global member of the organization, and we fully kicked off our operation in 2019 in Nigeria.
So what specifically are the major objectives of OWIT?
Okay, the major objective of OWIT is to have more women playing in regional and global trade. Because if you look at when you look at the exports itself, you don't have much women playing in the export corridors. So one of the major objectives of OWIT is to make sure that women are major exporters of goods and services out of the country, Nigeria, and even on the regional level, not just within Nigeria. And today I'm glad to tell you that we have women exporting containers from this country.
So that brings me, Mr. Chambong, to my next question, which is how active are women in the export trade in Africa generally? Now, we have always known that women are a very strong force in many aspects of our national lives. Women are very, even at local level, they are mostly those who are involved in agriculture and other productive endeavors at that level. But here now we're talking of players in the international stage. So how active, how much participation do we have from the women gender in this area?
Thank you very much for your question. I think let's go back a little bit to centuries. Women has always been kept in the kitchen for far too long. And since the rising of the women movement and gender balance by giving them the opportunity, now they are coming in. That statistically, it shows that women are now participating in trade across the continent of Africa. And with the introduction of AfCFTA, women are now participating more in the corridors of export and the import. But I believe that there's more room for the women to come in. And that is why, as part of this conference, we're looking at some of the barriers that they are facing and why are they not there. Are we giving them the chance enough for them to get involved? Are we opening the doors for them as we've been doing for the men? Remember, this particular area of trade and investment has always been male-dominated area. So nowadays, the women are coming up, and I believe that we can do more for them.
So let me ask you that question that you asked me. Are we, meaning the men folk, are we opening up enough access for the women to come into this area of business?
I would say that we haven't opened enough, especially in the continent of Africa. The reason being that you have men discussing the issues of women. When the gender that the problem is about them, they are not part of the conversation. So I believe that we need to now give them more opportunity. We need to give them more platform for the women to share their problems. And we, the male, needs to listen carefully. Listen to understand, not just to listen to just reply them and thinking that their space is not in this space. So I believe that we can do more as male figures in supporting our women in this international trade and business arena.
So, Madam President, since OWIT came on board, how much has he done to open more doors or create greater access for women participation in international trade and investments?
Thank you for that question. Since OWIT came on board in 2019, we've done some work. I wouldn't say we've done so much because there is still enough, there's a lot of ground to cover. First and foremost, I will use this word. If you go to the borders of Nigeria, especially the Seme border, you will see that those small traders, a lot of them are women. What we need is to formalize them. They contribute a lot, but you cannot come out now and say under Nigerian GDP that this is the percentage these women are contributing. We don't have that data. So part of the things we'll be looking at in this conference will be the data. Then let me quickly go back to OWIT. Since we came on board, we've been able to support a lot of women to understand. We're not saying that you need to be a professor for you to understand the basic protocols and agreement, but you now understand the market requirements that you need to know to be able to move your goods from Nigeria to whichever countries that you need to move them. We've done a lot of capacity building for women in trade, as helping them to understand that their product needs to meet standard and needs to be standard, because most of the issue why products are being rejected is the issue of not meeting standard. But if the women have this information, they know it, they are able to package their product so that their product will meet standard. These are some of the training we do. Then come to the access to finance. We always, women, you cannot get finance. But there are few women who are able to get finance today, because we are able to help them narrow, oh, you need to know how to balance your book, you need to know how to keep record. There you can approach the bank and get some fundings. So there is a whole lot. Under the AFCFTA, OWIT has been a voice also, making sure that gender in Nigeria is being mainstreamed into the AFCFTA.
Okay, we'll come back to that later on, but now that you've spoken about standards, I understand it to mean that you are talking about the standard of goods that are meant for export. But before you talk of standards, we must be talking about the productive base back home in the various countries where these things are produced. What do you consider to be the major challenges with production of such goods and services that you intend for export?
Okay, the major challenge is that you and I know that women really cannot pay for certification is very high. A single, an average woman who earns like up to 20,000 a month, you don't ask that woman to go and pay 10,000 for certification, $10,000. No. So what we've been pushing and advocating is that aggregation hub, which are innovation hub, should be created, which these hubs are being certified. Women can go in with their products and produce according to the required standard. And today, I'm happy to tell you that some of these things are being given listening ears. I've been to NAFDAC. NAFDAC is willing to support the women. I've been to different agencies that I wouldn't want to mention their name right now, but we're getting a maximum cooperation, that things are beginning to fall in place for us. And we know as soon as these hubs are set up across the country, specifically for women, we are able to produce, and women are able to contribute more to the GDP of this country.
Mr. Achepon, what are these products that we're talking about? These goods and services that we are talking about? What are the main ones that you are looking at or that are being produced in Nigeria for export?
All right. Just to mention a few, we look at, for instance, in the palm oil industry, we look at clothing. Let me use clothing as an example in this conversation. All right. Okay. In most of African attire, it's those of us in the diaspora that will be wearing the bar, because it's more of a cold area. You have more cold months than the summer month. And most of the clothing that we have in Africa, because of the temperature, is more worn in summertime. So how do we produce some of, because they are seasonal, all right? So how do we produce some of these clothes, make them standard that anybody can wear it? So these are some of the things that we're looking at producing them, that it is not only consumed in Nigeria or African continent, but also reach the international and the global market.
Madam President, apart from clothing and perhaps the palm oil business, what are the other areas that you and your members have been involved in? And you have been making all the reference to Nigeria. What of the other African countries that are also exporting? We know, for instance, that a country like Kenya exports flowers and is in high demand in most of Europe.
Okay, thank you. Don't forget that Nigeria too have their own peculiarity. In Nigeria, we have a lot of women playing at the shea butter space, which they've added a lot of values to the shea butter. Today you can have the soap, you can have the olein, you can have the cream, we have women that are playing. Then you have the ginger. Before we just export our raw ginger, but today as I speak, you have women who are producing ginger into powder, having ginger splits dried and packaged for exports. You have gari being made into different forms. You can have, I have one of our women that is producing gari snacks. So you can just pick this gari snack and you're just taking it because you have milk and sugar embedded in it and turmeric. You are not saying them, but you are snacking it. So there is a lot of products where women are key players and they are adding value to this product for export. Like our black soap too. Women are playing in that corridor. They are making it into tablets. They are having the liquid where you take and where you have as your shower gel. So women are playing a different roles in this value chain, and they are producing. And some of this product, you can find it even in our local shops here. Go to ShopRite, go to Spar, you can find some of this product. It's meeting international standard. The packaging, they are already certified by SUN and NAFDAC.
Okay, Mr. Achapong,
Yes,
quite a number of these products that she's talked about. But let's look at the constraints which she talked about much earlier on. Apart from finance, there's also the issue of infrastructure in most African countries, but particularly so in Nigeria. How are the women coping with that challenge?
All right, I would say the pressure is too much for them. It's too much for them. I don't know whether you've traveled along these borders and see how women are struggling in order to get one product from just a country. Let's say Nigeria, we share border with Benin. If you've ever been to Nigeria and Benin border.
Nigeria, Benin, Togo, and Ghana borders. That corridor.
That corridor.
If I'm traveling on that corridor alone, in spite of the ECOWAS protocol, is a big issue.
It's a big issue.
Yes.
I've driven through these borders, and trust me, between Ghana and Togo border. Now, the challenge that we're having, okay, is that Ghana speaks English, is an Anglophone country. Togo and Benin are Francophone. You have Nigeria being Anglophone. So these barriers now, language now becomes a problem. Because if you speak English and you can't speak French, now the one on the French side, translation now becomes a problem. And we all know that when language is a problem, okay, interpretation and other things, and our women, these are some of the things that we need to look at and address, okay, in order to ease them to be able to take their product through quickly. Now, if your product has got expiry date and you get to this border and they are delaying you paperwork, okay, can we computerize it? Can we have things that they don't need to get to the border and go through that paperwork? Can they process it here, make everything, sign it off? So they just get to the border with QR code, they scan it, knowing that the same product that they have and the quantity and everything. Now you get to some of these borders and some of these offices, and I will say it clearly, they want to take money from these women. The letter that these women has put in, trying to go and sell, to come and feed the family, you also taking a chunk out of it. Okay, how do they balance this whole thing? How do they deal with it? So, as much as they are making progress and they are trying their best, I believe that these women are going through a lot. And that is why we want to look at it in this conference to be able to address it and raise the issue and let everybody know that, listen, we can do better and support these women.
Are there some, for instance, from what you have talked about now, food products that are affected by this kind of bureaucracy and red tapeism that goes on at these borders? And do you sometimes have stories of people whose products perish while they are waiting for clearance at these borders?
Many of them. Many of them. By the time that they get to their destination, you find that a lot of them, okay, are out of date. Sometimes they're handling, and because it took so much time, And you know the irony side of things, sometimes they pack these containers and they get there and it's like there's no trust. So they need to offload them, count them one by one, and then load them again. And in the process, because it is manually handled at the border, there's a whole lot of things that happens to them. Also, they're producing here because of the quality of the infrastructure and how they will preserve it. It doesn't have enough longevity. So if the product is to last, let's say 3 months, and you delay the person on the border, let's say the product is leaving Nigeria to Ghana. If you delay 2 weeks at the border of Nigeria, 2 weeks at the border of Togo, by the time that you get to Ghana, how long has it take or have you got in order to be able to sell the product? So these are some of the things that we need to look into.
So how is OWIT dealing with this whole issue of infrastructural deficit in its member countries?
We engage the government. Like I would say, for us in Nigeria, we've always worked closely with the Ministry of Trade and Investment. We've sent in support documents where we think that they can support us. And we've been given a lot of listening ears. And I will tell you that there are things that are changing. But like I will always say, more can be done to make sure that these women we get it right and we're being supported. Don't forget that trade laws and trade policies, they are gender blind. So we've been trying to push. It's something that is going to take us a time. It's a process. We can't get it right in one day. But the different ministry, like you look, Export Promotion Council, they have a lot of programs these days that is really supporting the export corridor in terms of training, in terms of understanding the market requirement where your product is going to. Organizations like GIZ, who is our support, GIZ have been able to train a lot of SMEs and they've given priority to women to make sure that their product is really meeting up. And other organizations, in Ministry of Trade and Investment, you have the Agri and Commodity Department, which they've been doing a lot of training. But we are saying, yes, but we still need more to be done because, yes, we do training on. Don't forget that most of the product taken at our agro product, we need to get down to the locals, where these women will understand. From planting, you need to understand when you need to plant, when you need to weed, the kind of chemical that needs to be used. So everybody needs to be involved.
So when you say that policies are gender blind, what exactly are you advocating? Are you, for instance, saying that some of these policies should be skewed in to the advantage of the women or in favor of the women as opposed to what it is at the moment? Should there be some concessions made for women who are into international trade?
I like the word when you use concession. We wouldn't want to say just create a particular policy for just women, because when you and I take our products out, it is nobody knows if it's a woman, but if we're giving concession, it will help us better to be able to compete with the men folk. Okay.
So, well, that's a very tricky one there, Mr. Achapong. The women need to compete favorably with the men folk, but they need some concessions to get that done, or to be on that same pedestal with the men. Yeah. But of course, you know that they are all on the same standing as far as government is concerned, as far as international business standards are concerned. So how do you maneuver through that labyrinth?
All right, you see, if you and I are going to run, okay, or somebody has been running for a long time, and he's been practicing running for a long time, and if I'm now coming to run with that person, automatically training will show that the person will have advantage over me. Okay, let's look at that. Men have been trading for a long time, centuries. So we've perfected in that. So any man can just stand up. It's easy for a man to stand up. In fact, in a family, we encourage men to start businesses. How about the women? So what we are trying to say in OWIT here or agenda here is that, okay, the concession that we are saying, we are not saying that you can make concession, and the concession can come in a form of, let's train these women. Let's give them the facilities that they need. Yeah, the policy is there. We are not saying that don't change it, because when this product gets out, they don't know who is behind it. But are we putting more in capacity development? Are we giving them the necessary tools, the necessary facilities for them to be able to reach out, or we are allowing them to do the same thing with the men, and then they're going out there? So what we are trying to say, you can give the policy a little bit, but let's do more behind the policies so that they can meet up. So for instance, if I'm going to run with somebody who running his field, or he's been doing it for over the time, and we are starting from 100 meters, probably if you give me to run from 50, don't you think that we can compete at the same level? But if you're asking me to run with an experienced person from the 100 line, I won't get in there when I'll be tired, and then I will drop it. So these are some of the things that it's very difficult thing to look at, but we believe that if we have to sit down with them and listen to them and hear where they are coming from and listen to their challenges, probably that will inform us to be able to do the policies in such a way that it will consider them and their businesses in place.
Have you been receiving that listening ear to the challenges and the problems that the women are having as far as this trade and business is concerned?
I will use yes and I will use no because it's tricky. Yes, we've been given listening ear, and still we've not been given listening ear. Because don't forget that you have different tiers of government. And then these women are pushing from all levels. Let's take the case now of the last primaries that was done. Women were shouting, let the post of the vice be given to a woman. No woman was given any position. This last political party, we didn't have any woman in any of the presidential race. Which for you and I know. How do now we push policies when women are not at the aim of legislation? So that alone is a barrier of itself, of its own, first and foremost. Because why this whole issue is like not coming to play. Yes, you go there, you see these things on papers. Are they being implemented? That's why I use the word is yes and no. Yeah. We have a lot of beautiful laws for women. Do we have the implementation? We don't really have most of those implementation. We sit at the round table, women have championed, we need this, we need that. Oh, a policy just came out that women should be given this, but there's no affirmative action. The 35% women have been crying, do we have up to 10% in government? We don't have it. It trickles down to how these policies affect us as business people.
All right. Well, let's take a short break. When we return, we'll be focusing on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which Nigeria is signatory to. In fact, Nigeria has ratified that treaty, that agreement, and how is it impacting on the export trade, and particularly so the women who are in this sphere of business. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We are very much here with the Organization of Women in International Trade, and of course, we have the president of OWIT in Nigeria, who is Mrs. Blessing Irabo Oza, and is joined by Mr. Achampong, who is the chairman of the organizing committee of the conference that's coming up in the nation's capital here, Abuja. Welcome.
Thank you.
Madam President, let's talk about the areas you think women who are in international trade require more effective support and the kind of support, apart from policies that you have talked about, what is the kind of support and what are the strategies that you think can be deployed to actually help them realize their goals in this area?
The area we're looking at supports, you can't run businesses without finance. And today when you go to access finance, because women don't really own landed properties, not just in Nigeria, this thing is all over Africa. We really don't own our properties. We are saying that our businesses can be used to give us soft loan, and then we grow from stage to stage. That's number one. We want to have information. Women don't really have information of what are the new trade policies that are just coming up. We don't have such informations. We are looking at how do we support women to get this certification that is needed. That was why I mentioned the area of setting up a certified hub across the country where women just, you don't need to produce in your home anymore. If you cannot, there are some that can have a factory on their own. Yes, that's fine. But a lot of women, 70% cannot have a place that can be approved by SON, NAFDAC, or other international standard body. But if we have this aggregation hub and it's being approved, you just take your product down there to produce, and you are producing to standard requirements.
Some kind of cooperative, is that what you're looking at?
An aggregation hub is like a big warehouse where it has been done. You have the different machineries to produce there. All you need to do is pick your raw materials to this place, and you pay a token for it. You pay, and your product are being produced to the international required standard that you are having there. You can now even take a space, and NAFDAC will easily give you a number there. So you don't need to start looking, because if you go to most of these women where they are producing, it's not hygienic. It's not. And most of the time, our son, when they get there, really you cannot get number. Look at over 60% of products in the markets that you see that women have produced that they've packaged is beautiful. Some of them don't have NAFDAC numbers. You and I know that. And this is not just peculiar to Nigeria. But if we have places like that where women take their products, SON, NAFDAC, and any other certification body can easily give them, because they know you are producing under an hygienic and you're being supervised to produce to this require. So that is one of the support we will be looking at for women, in terms of to make sure that we are able to compete with our, not just our male counterparts, we are able to compete with other countries in terms of AFTA, and we are able to trade more amongst ourselves. The issue of logistics is not the same thing between me and a man who is exporting. Let me use across the Niger border now. As a woman, I can't just move my product like that. You know, there are challenges. First, the religion has an impediment in it. Then the border agencies who sees you as a woman who is vulnerable, who really don't know some of our rights. So we prefer, let there be a continuous workshop, conferences where women are being trained. They know what their rights are. They have this information at their tip. We don't need to come to your office to get this information. Today is a digital space. Put this thing out online, work with different associations, let them have this required information for us to go across the borders if our women needs to go across the borders, instead of me coming to your office to come and pick some of these informations.
How much of government involvement will that involve? Knowing that this is business and that this is profit driven, apart from, say, the government policies and the kind of structures that you need to export, what she's talking about now, the kind of support that is required, how much of it do you expect government to provide? And what is the business community itself investing? What is it putting in to get this required result?
All right. So when it comes to business, as a business expert, there are a couple of ways that I look at these things. The government machinery is there to provide policies and guidelines. And the government can do so much. Now, this is what we are also calling the private sector to come in. So the private sector has got a lot to do. But you realize that when FDIs are coming in, they go through the government, all right? And they discuss it at government level because of sovereignty. Do the government also get the private sector into some of this conversation for them to be able to understand what is going on, how much is being invested, and what are the opportunities that are available? So in spite of that, or looking into that, some of the support that, we're calling on the government, that is one, in terms of policy and all that, but also we're calling into the private sector to be able to look at some of this. And so she mentioned access to finance. Yeah, you go to the bank is asking for collateral, they're asking for things that as a woman, you don't have it. How about we having the individual rich men, women that can also support these women in business? Another thing that we're looking at is digitalization. Okay, if some of these trainings are being offered to women and then also supporting them with computers, laptops, and so much, a lot of things will be able to done. You mentioned the word supervisory, which is very key. I'm in business and we have people that we mentor them. We hold their hands from just having an idea to develop that idea into a concept. Now the concept is not translated into a business. Take it into a business model, produce it. So you go through that stages and you can't do it alone. Somebody needs to hold your hands. Somebody who has been in business needs to hold your hands. How many businesses that are established by male that are mentoring some of these women in business? How many of them are putting them under their wings to carry them through? Or do they see them as vulnerable, that they will take advantage of them? So this is where we're calling. And I'm happy that you mentioned the government. The government can do a lot, but we also call it the private sector. That is why this after agreement is very key. That let's look more into the private sector. Let us be a voice for the private sector. Let the private sector come up. The government has done so much. And if Africa is going to be changed by government, we would have seen by now. Especially in doing business in the continent, let's look at the private sector taking up and do business. Let's trade. Let's do business. And let's leave the government doing the policy. But let's sit around the same table and discuss to be able. But don't let the government sit on one side, the private sector sit on the other side. The government does policies without consulting the private sector. The private sector want to do business and they realize that the government policies is unfavorable to the business that they are doing. So let's come to the round table. And then everybody knows their roles and responsibility, go and do the body. In Africa, and with the agreement of which Nigeria has appended their signature, I believe that the private sector must lead the Africa. And this is where we are calling that when they say that the private sector sit down, let them bring the women involved in the decision making. Let them engage them. Don't try to have maybe 9 males and 1 female there, thinking that we've done our best by just bringing them in. If it is 6 to 4, it's okay. If it is 5 to 5, it's okay. So that whenever you're talking about what affects women and stuff like that, you'll be able to hear from the other side of things. So this is some of the kind of support that we're calling. We need mentorship, we need training, okay? We need, infrastructure being provided for that. She mentioned on the hub, okay? If these hubs are established, yes, these women can come with their product or can come with the raw material, and after an extensive research has been done for them, then you can produce. For instance, if you go to a perfume factory, okay, they don't produce one particular, you can come with your whatever requirement that it is, and these factories will produce and put your brand there. This is what has been happening. And I believe that if we should provide all these things for them, we will see, especially in the continent of Africa, because women trade a lot. The SMEs, they do a lot more than the main stream kind of businesses. And you realize that these women, the little that they are getting, is what's sustaining the family fabrics. And if you take it away from them, the society breaks away.
Well, Madam Mirabel, before we come to the whole concept of the AFTA agreement and the framework, let's talk very quickly, because we've been talking about the constraints of finance, the constraints of infrastructure, and what have you, in helping the women to become very productive. How much has security or insecurity, as it were, affected the trade business, the international export business?
Wow, that's a very big one. Insecurity has affected it badly, because you know that most of these products that we're talking about is agro products. Farmers can no longer go to the farm, especially the women. So at the end of the day, you really don't have much product to produce. And the few ones you have, our prices are just too high. We're not able to compete. We're really looking at the government to provide a pathway for security in this country. Like 3 years back, I have a farm. But today, I cannot go to that farm. I'm from Edo State. I have a farm, I get workers, they work on that farm and will produce. The same thing that is happening to me is happening to other women here. And then other countries in West Africa that have this insecurity issue, that they cannot go to their farmland alone to go and farm and produce. Even if you have a commercial farm, can you afford the cost of getting a security outfit to be going to the farm with you? No. Women are being scared. Women are so scared not to be raped. Even for you to travel as a woman now from like Edo State to Abuja to bring your product, you can't do that, because you are scared that you might be kidnapped on the road. So it's affecting women badly.
And Mr. Chapong, there's also the issue of the volatility of foreign exchange in most African countries. How is that impacting the export business?
Enormous. The impact is too much. Now the world is trading in dollar, and you have this inflation, you have this, whatever going on. So by the time that these currencies are bought or exchanged, it reduces in value. You look at Nigeria, we spend Naira. You look at Benin and Togo, they spend different currency. You go to Ghana, different currency. I'm using this West Africa borderline as an example without going into other African countries. So this is where the call is. I am part of an organization, the African Private Sector Summit Organization. In fact, I'm a deputy chair and then a founder as well. And one of the things that we're advocating for is a single currency for the African continent. So now we have the trade agreement, but it's becoming a problem because we don't have free movement of people and goods. And then we also don't have the stability of the currency. Now, zeroing in on women, you realize that the little that these women have that they've labored for, either they were given by their husbands or maybe an uncle or an auntie somewhere for them to trade. Now they are buying this dollar, and the dollar, now I don't know the exchange rate this morning, okay, but it keeps going up, keep going up, keep going up. So the little that you have, you buy today, buy the goods, by the time that you produce, it has lost value. Now, how do you export it? How much are you going to earn in balancing? So this is where the government also needs to intervene to stabilize the currency. Or let's go to AU and say that let's have a single currency. I know that is debatable. We've been struggling, going back and forth with all kinds of things. But I believe that it's high time that we have our own currency and be able to trade. And be able to, if we are going to compete at the international level, and have a single currency. Why do we have so many divisions in the continent of Africa, yet it's one continent? So let's call a spade a spade. Let's go nitty-gritty to the problem. Let's deal with it. And let's say that Africa, let's have a single currency. By that, if the women are trading, they know that they lift their goods from Nigeria it will be the same in South Africa. It will be the same in Zimbabwe. It will be the same in Morocco. That's the way Europe has been dealing with.
Okay. Well, Madam President, let's spend the little time we have left to talk about the after. Now, when it was set out with the aim to boost intra-African trade by actually providing comprehensive and mutually beneficial trade agreement among member states. Nigeria, as you are well aware, has since ratified that agreement, but it doesn't appear as if Nigeria is playing in the big league in AFTA. How are the women keying into the AFTA framework?
Okay, first and foremost, this agreement has been signed, has been ratified, just like you mentioned. Don't forget, AFTA is not just a one-stop thing. It's a process. Yes, trading has not begun, but the women are actually positioning themselves. That is why we're having this different conference to see how women can really trade among themselves, leveraging AFTA and other free trade. Like if you look at the ECOWAS has their own ECOWAS free trade liberation agreement, which women from Benin to Nigerian has been leveraging on. The same will AFTA be, but a lot needs to be put in place for AFTA to work for us. And this conference we are having, we are going to be looking at what are those things that we need that will help these women to really trade amongst themselves. What are the bottleneck and how do we remove the bottleneck? What will be the solution to this bottleneck? Come this conference, last year, during the African Women Continental Free Trade, we looked at the challenges. But this year, we're not looking at the challenges, we're looking at the solution. That is why one of our partners will be unveiling the research they did for women on access to financing.
At this conference?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman, we are the chairman of the organizing committee of this conference. What are the expected outcomes?
All right. Thank you so very much, sir. As my able president said, there has been so much talk since the introduction of AFTA. And then also there has always been an advocacy for this, advocacy for that. So in this particular conference, we're looking at the solutions as she mentioned. And not only just look at the solutions and pack them on the shelf, but how do we implement it? How do we implement it? Because it is the implementation. You see, AFTA is the best parcel or gift that Africans has been given, or Africa has been giving to Africans. It's a gift. Now, that gift, if it is not used well, it can become a curse on us. So this particular conference, as a chairman...
A very large market at that.
Yes. So this particular conference, we're looking at real solutions, and after gathering solutions, how do we now implement them? What are the practical steps? And that's why we're going to call on the government, all agencies, all player stakeholders to be able to say at the end of this conference, these are the things that we came up with. These are the ways that we believe that it can be implemented. Therefore, let's put our hands on deck. And then when we implement it, to just make the Africa that we always want.
The conference is going to last for how long?
The conference is actually going to be 2 days, 28th and the 29th. But on the 30th, we're having awards night to actually honor all the people that have supported women in whatever facets that you can think of.
And are you getting some support from international organizations for this?
Yes, I'm sorry, before I answer that question, we're having a pre-summit conference tomorrow by the CLDP. The CLDP is being supported by the African Women and Youth group. Is an American government. So we're having the pre-conference and summit tomorrow. That will be looking at pathway to AFTA. But the conference proper, like I said, is 28th to 30th, which we have the theme positioning women for the next big opportunity for regional and global marketplace. Yes, we got support from the International Trade Center, which is One Trade Africa. They are supporting this conference. We also got support from GIZ. GIZ is our titled sponsor for this year, but the part of GIZ is the ECOWAS agricultural trade, and we have UNECA, who worked with us, which is the United Nations Economic Forum for Africa. They are with us. And we also have the CLDP, like I mentioned. Those 4 organizations supported us to make sure that we have this conference and women's voices are being heard.
All right, thank you so much. I wish you the very best in your conference and hope that at the end of it all, you will get the needed and required support from government and from the private sector to get to explore the big opportunities, the next big opportunities that Madam President is talking about for women. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Right, Mrs. Blessing Iraboza is the President, Organization of Women in International Trade, OWIT, in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time. And she's been joined by Mr. Benjamin Achampong, who is the chairman of the organizing committee of the OWIT conference that is coming up in the nation's capital, Abuja, in the next few days. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
For you, our viewers out there, I want to thank you for investing your time with us. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of the program, People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.